My mom is very fit and strong. She's a good swimmer. This story just does not make sense to me. Like, there's also been history of domestic violence in that relationship, so I do believe something might have happened to her.
She said it plainly. No tears, no theatrics, just the kind of calm that comes from a daughter who has already processed the worst and is now in war mode. Her name was LYNETTE HOOKER, 55 years old, a wife, a mother, a woman who quit her career, sold her house, gave away everything she owned, just to chase a dream on the open water with the man she had loved for 25 years. She named that dream. She called it Soulmate. That was the name of their boat. Think about that for a moment. The woman who chose that name is now missing. And the man who shared that boat with her has been on a plane back to Sacramento since the day after he was released from custody. Tonight, we are going to walk you through every single detail of this case. The photos, the timestamps, the recorded phone calls. It's the texts LYNETTE sent to her friends and the words of a daughter who refused to stay quiet. Because LYNETTE HOOKER deserves the truth, and you deserve to hear it. LYNETTE Ruth HOOKER was not someone who stumbled into the sailing life. She grew up around water. According to her Michigan neighbors, she was sailing as a child. Before most kids could even swim, it was in her blood. She and her husband Brian had spent years dreaming of a life on the ocean, and they weren't just talking about it. In 2023, they bought a Morgan 461, a 1980 charter sailboat, and they put everything into it. They sold their home in Kentwood, Michigan. They documented the whole journey on their YouTube channel, which they called the Sailing Hookers. They posted videos of crossing the Gulf of Mexico, navigating the Mississippi River, reaching the Bahamas. On the surface, this was the dream. 2 people, 1 boat, the wide open sea. But underneath the beautiful footage, there was a story that never made it onto camera. Because in the months before LYNETTE disappeared, she sent a text message to a sailing friend. A message so quiet, so heartbreaking, that when it surfaced, it changed everything about how people saw this case. I guess it was too much closeness. We decided to call it quits. I'm not going back. She had quit her career for this, given away everything she owned, and within weeks of being on that boat, she wanted out. So the question is, did Brian Hooker know she was planning to leave him? Now let us walk you through what actually happened on the night of Saturday, April 4th, 2026, because the timeline is everything in this case. That afternoon, Brian and LYNETTE pulled their dinghy up to the Abaco Inn on Elbow Cay. They came for drinks by the pool. The bartender, a 20-year veteran named Ken, remembers them clearly. Brian came to the bar. LYNETTE went straight to the pool. Over the course of about 2 hours, Brian made 2 trips to the bar and ordered 2 rounds of Cuba Libres. That's rum and Coke with lime. The bartender says Brian seemed fine, normal. No signs of tension, no raised voices, no argument. By all appearances, just a couple having drinks on a beautiful Saturday evening in the Bahamas. But then comes the photograph. A local fisherman named Joe was out by the water that evening, taking a photo to send to his mom. It was a beautiful night. He snapped 2 pictures of the pool area, and it wasn't until the next day that he realized what he had captured. In the photograph, there they are, Brian and LYNETTE HOOKER. She's still at the pool. You can identify Brian clearly from the USMC tattoo on his left shoulder. LYNETTE is wearing her black 2-piece bathing suit and a green cover-up over it. Here is where it gets critical. The timestamp on that photograph reads 6:34 p.m. Brian Hooker told authorities and told friends in his recorded phone call that they left the bar around 7 to 7:30 that evening. But the surveillance footage from the Abaco Inn, which LYNETTE's daughter Carly was allowed to view, shows them leaving the premises closer to 6:38 p.m. That is nearly a full hour earlier than Brian claimed. Now, why does that matter? Brian's account of drifting on that dinghy for approximately 9 hours already raised red flags with experienced boaters. But if they left closer to 6:38 instead of 7:30, that stretch becomes 10 hours. Maybe more. 4 miles of water in 20-knot winds. Every single boat captain and sailing expert who has been asked about that timeline has said the same thing. It doesn't hold. There is one more detail about that photograph that no one initially caught. When Brian spoke to Fire and Rescue, and when he gave his account to investigators, he described Lynette as wearing a two-piece black bathing suit. That was all he said. He never mentioned the green cover-up. The cover-up she is clearly wearing in the last known photo of her alive. Why would a husband forget what his wife was wearing when he was supposedly standing right beside her the moment she went overboard? Now we get to the moment that made even Brian's closest friends turn on him. After the incident, Brian called a group of friends to tell them what happened. He was calm. He was composed. And the things he said were so disturbing, not because of what happened, but because of how he talked about it, that his friends secretly hit record.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some-knot winds that popped up, and on a half-mile maybe trip back to the dinghy, and single thing failed. Every single thing. We weren't wearing life jackets. It was sundown, and the sun set like basically 10 minutes after she fell over. Dinghy key over with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody, and she had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her. Yeah, it was inflated. Inflated because it was folded, but the wind blew us apart so fast that I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat, back to our sailboat, which was probably, 1,000 yards or something. But the waves were 3 foot, and I was trying to ship the oars, and one of the pins on the oars broke, and that bird dropped over the side. And I was yelling for her the whole time, and I yelled to her that I lost the oar, and I threw the anchor out and anchored the dinghy, and I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore.
In that recording, Brian describes what he calls and these are his exact words, a cascade of failures. Let us count those failures together. Number 1, no life jackets. 2 experienced boaters at night on choppy water, neither wearing a life jacket. Number 2, the kill switch for the dinghy's electric motor was in Lynette's dry bag, which went overboard with her, meaning the moment she fell in, the engine was also lost. Number 3, the oar pin broke as he was trying to row toward her. One of the pins snapped, and the oar dropped into the water. Number 4, in just 10 minutes, the sun went completely down. Number 5, the moon had not yet risen. Moonrise that night was logged at 10:05 p.m. Number 6, he threw a flotation cushion toward her but says he could not tell whether she caught it. That cushion has never been found. Number 7, a powerboat passed nearby. He fired 2 flares. They did not stop. Number 8, another boat came by 5 minutes later. Same result. 8 failures. In 90 seconds of audio, every single one conveniently explaining why he could not save his wife. But here is what his friends noticed, and what they told investigators. In that entire phone call, Brian Hooker never once sounded panicked, and he was describing the disappearance of his wife, and he sounded like he was recounting a fishing trip that went slightly wrong. And then there was something else, something that made his friends press record immediately. He was already referring to Lynette in the past tense. She was not declared dead. She had not been found. Search and rescue was still actively looking for her, and Brian Hooker was already speaking about her as though she was gone. Now let us talk about the flares, because this is a detail that cannot be overlooked. Brian claims in the recording that he fired both of his emergency flares to signal the passing boats. But multiple reports from Bahamian authorities that weekend confirmed none of the emergency equipment on that dinghy had been used, including the flares. And either the flares were fired and none of the boats saw them on a clear night in relatively shallow open water, or Brian Hooker is lying about firing them at all. Which one is more believable to you? We need to go back to those text messages, because they are the key to understanding why this case feels so different from a simple boating accident. Months before she disappeared, Lynette reached out to a friend she had met through the sailing community. And in that conversation, she said something that would only make sense much later. I guess it was too much closeness. We decided to call it quits. I'm not going back. Heartbroken considering I quit my awesome career, sold my house, and gave away everything I owned to cruise. She had been married to Brian for 25 years, and her daughter Carly describes that marriage as rocky at best.
Believing that she just fell off, even if she did, I don't understand why he didn't drop anchor and look for her, or even swim to go get her because he was a Marine. I hope she's just on an island somewhere partying it up, just away from life for a second. But the longer it's been, the more doubt I have. I'm concerned that his anger got the best of him in an argument, and he's done something that he can't undo. Like, I get waves of sadness hit me, and I just start crying. Like, I'll go through our texts, and I'll start bawling. I don't know, he's always made, like, the rules of the house and came up with all my groundings. But I know my mom and him have had issues, and they've broken up in the past, so their relationship was a little rocky, but I would always have, be nice to him and everything just for my...
And this was not the first time Lynette had tried to leave. A neighbor who lived across the street from the family in Michigan tells a story that is difficult to hear. She says that about 2 years before Lynette disappeared, Darlene, Brian's mother who lives across the street, quietly let the neighborhood know that Lynette was going to be staying at the house for a while, to get away from the relationship. Lynette stayed there for months, and then one day, she went back. This is not unusual when it comes to domestic violence situations. Experts will tell you, the pattern of leaving and returning is one of the most documented cycles in abusive relationships. The psychological grip does not release easily. Even when someone has every resource to leave, family, finances, a community, the emotional weight of what has been done to them can feel impossible to overcome. There is also a police report from 2015 in Kentwood, Michigan. Officers were called to the home at 1:05 in the morning for a domestic disturbance. Both Brian and Lynette were present. Lynette told officers that Brian had struck her in the forehead and choked her. Brian told officers she had punched him in the face multiple times. He had a bloody nose. She had no visible injuries. The warrant was reviewed and denied. The reason given by the prosecutor? Insufficient evidence as to who started the assault. The case was closed, and 12 years later, Lynette was on a boat in the Bahamas with the same man. She had tried to leave before. She had sent texts saying she was done. So what happened in those final hours on that dinghy? Let us talk about Brian Hooker's behavior in the days after Lynette vanished. Because in cases like this, behavior matters as much as evidence. When Brian finally made it to shore after his supposed 9-hour ordeal drifting in that dinghy, he was met by fire and rescue. And the first question he asked them was not how many search boats are out there. It was not where is the command post so I can help. It was not, have you found my wife? His first question was, how do I get my dinghy back? Fire and rescue workers noted this. They noticed that he asked nothing about the logistics of the search. No questions about the Coast Guard operation. Nothing about where she might have drifted or what the current conditions were. Then there is the matter of the sailboat. After Lynette disappeared, Brian moved the Soulmate from its original anchoring position to a mooring ball at Marsh Harbor. Think about what that means. If Lynette had survived, if someone had found her or she had swum to safety, she would have looked for their boat. She would have expected it to be where she left it, and it was gone. Brian was taken into custody on April 8th. He was released without charges on April 13th, and the very next day, he was on a plane to the United States. He told the press, and told his mother, who relayed it to News Nation, that he was going to continue searching for Lynette. His mother said, quote, "He is talking to his kids by phone and hopes to see them soon. He flew to Sacramento to visit his sick mother." As of the time of this video, there is no confirmed account of Brian Hooker joining a single search boat. Not one. He said he would never stop searching. He left the island the day after he was released. What does that tell you? Now we want you to hear from the one person who has refused to let this story go quiet. Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth. Carly flew from Michigan to the Bahamas. She puddle jumped from Nassau to Marsh Harbor. She took a ferry across to Elbow Cay, and when she finally arrived, she went straight to the Abaco Inn, the last place her mother was seen alive. She watched surveillance footage of her mom walking toward the water, and then she got on a boat, rowed out to the mooring ball, and stepped onto Soulmate.
So give me your thoughts now that you've arrived here at the Abaco Inn.
I'm happy to get some answers and I'm glad to see some video of my mom, her last moments. I just got to see her at the bar and walking down to the water, but that's about it.
Do you have a greater sense of the lay of the land now that you've had a chance to walk around this area where they may have parked their dinghy right here, right over there? Do you get a better feel for everything now that you're here?
Yeah, I got to go on a boat ride and retrace their steps basically and see the bar that they were at before Abaco Inn and ask questions there. They didn't have any, they said nothing was out of the they said nothing. Yeah.
Nothing was out of the ordinary?
Out of the ordinary,
Yes.
yes. And basically the water, it was high tide, but it seemed like the water was shallow enough where they could at least like touch it sometimes. So that's where I'm confused on why he didn't jump in, because he's pretty tall. So I'm just confused why he didn't.
No, the story's been bullshit from the beginning.
We've thought it was sketchy the whole time. So just seeing it in person, it just solidifies that it's sketchy to us.
Yeah. You had a chance to go to Soulmate and get on board.
She has not spoken to Brian since he called to tell her what happened. She has not answered his calls. She has not returned his voicemails. And when Ashley Banfield asked her directly, "What do you think happened?" Nothing good. Those are the words of a daughter who has already accepted that her mother may never come home, but who refuses, absolutely refuses, to let the story be buried alongside her. Carly told Ashley that the Bahamian people were the kindest strangers she had ever encountered. They gave her boat rides to the mooring ball without even being asked. They showed her where everything happened, and every single one of them, according to Carly, told her the same thing about Brian's story. They all think his story is garbage. Here is where the case stands right now. Lynette Hooker has been missing for over 2 weeks. The U.S. Coast Guard conducted an extensive search. Aircraft, sonar, drones, cadaver dogs along every shoreline. They found nothing. The water in the Sea of Abaco is shallow enough in most places to see the bottom, and they found nothing. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. He remains a named suspect. There is no statute of limitations on murder in the United States, and a U.S. citizen can be charged in American courts for crimes committed abroad. The investigation is ongoing, and somewhere in Sacramento, the last man to see Lynette Hooker alive is staying at his mother's house. The boat is named Soulmate. The woman who gave it that name is gone, and the only person who knows exactly what happened on that water on the night of April 4th has not spoken the full truth to anyone, not to investigators, not to Carly, not to the friends who were kind enough to listen and wise enough to press record. The water was 4 to 7 feet deep. He is a Marine. He was driving the boat, and he didn't jump in. Why? If you know anything about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, please contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force or the U.S. Coast Guard immediately. For Lynette, for Carly. And because the truth always has a way of rising to the surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it.